Hello, everyone, and welcome to STEM Forward with Women virtual conference. My name is Anuja Punlik, and I am a senior engineering manager here at Udacity. I identify as a fellow woman in STEM, and I am passionate about the whole topic of STEM. It is truly my honor to welcome everyone to this important discussion about driving representation in STEM related subjects and how we can all work together to ensure that women gain access to these careers and thrive in them. We have gathered an impressive list of thought leaders and luminaries from top companies to give us their unique perspectives on inclusion in STEM and how to navigate the issues that can impede a woman's career path. We also have inspiring stories from our own Women in STEM Scholarship Program graduates. These amazing women will share their views on what being a woman in this industry means to them and their experience in our scholarship programs. And talking of scholarships, everyone attending this conference will have a chance to win a scholarship, courtesy of Udacity's valued customer and partner, Saudi Telecom. All you need to do is fill out the post-event survey for your chance to win. To kick off our event today, I am proud to introduce our opening keynote speaker, Anne-Marie Imafidon, the founder and CEO of STEMETS, an award-winning social enterprise inspiring the next generation of females into STEM roles via a series of impactful events and opportunities. One of the youngest ever to be awarded master's degree in mathematics and computer science by the University of Oxford at the age of 20, Anne-Marie unsurprisingly continued to soar. She's been listed among the top 50 women in tech in the world by Forbes, voted the fifth most influential woman in IT by Computer Weekly, and was the recipient of the prestigious Barclays UK Woman of the Year award. We are all looking forward to hearing her thoughts, as well as fantastic panelists that follow her. To close our event, we have Sherry Etchison, who is an award-winning global diversity, equity, and inclusion leader. She is also an advisory board member for Women Who Code and was also listed as one of the UK's top most influential women in tech. With that said, I'll turn it over to Anne-Marie. Enjoy the conference.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm super excited to be sharing with you all this morning at STEM Forward with Women. And thank you very much to Udacity for including me as part of your launch of this exciting journey that you're all going on. So my talk is called The Tech Landscape and Why Tech Needs Diversity. And this is something that I'm hoping will maybe set the scene for a lot of the discussions that you're going to have, panel sessions that you'll be engaging with today, but also for the future of the network and also for, you know, each of your own futures in your careers and your learning journeys that you're all on. So a little bit about me and why this is something that I am passionate about and talk about all the time. I always love to include this baby photo here on the left-hand side, baby toddler, young child photos, me aged 4. It's one of my earliest memories, actually, and I've got a bit of a cheeky face on me in the photo, but one of my earliest memories is actually taking things apart and wanting to know how things work. And so at home, taking apart our VCR player with me being like, why did this black rectangular object go into another black rectangular object? And then Timon and Pumbaa shows up on a third black rectangular object. And so I remember taking it apart to see where Timon and Pumbaa had come from, how that had worked. I remember my dad almost killing me, but not quite killing me. But that was the beginning of my journey of curiosity and my understanding of technology. And at that point, I didn't know that was what technology or engineering was all about. I didn't do it just because, I wanted to learn all the things, but just because I wanted to understand how that particular thing worked. And so this is something that's kind of stayed with me into adulthood. Went through this kind of child prodigy childhood of, doing lots of exams in maths and ICT and computer science early, really enjoying the fact that I could learn how things work, understand that process, apply that process again and again, whether it was exam questions or in databases I was playing with, and then apply that knowledge to then solve problems and to help people. And so I ended up working, I studied maths and computer science at Oxford, and ended up working in technology industry, working in a technical role, but in the financial industry actually, and really, really enjoying being able to take what I'd done as a child, what I'd done when I was younger, but do that full time and be paid to kind of play on the computer all day and solve problems and understand things and then help people with that knowledge. So that's a little bit about the kind of the beginning of my journey. And I ended up then spotting an issue which relates very much to the topic of this talk and starting up social enterprise STEMettes, which I'll come on to very shortly. But for me, it's been super exciting to take that path of curiosity and build that into a technical career, because there's so many things that you might be learning on your courses, so many things you might engage with in your career, so many things you might have studied if you chose to study computer science or maths or engineering at any point. And for me, the exciting thing has been all these things that we kind of tinkered with or kind of imagined or kind of played with, whether it's the mobile internet, whether it's cloud technology, whether it's advanced robotics, all of these things have now become real, right? It's all these things that we kind of tinker with, or you kind of explore, you kind of play with almost inanely, that have ended up having real impact and having real, causing real disruption, I guess, to life in the way we know it. So this is a really blurry screenshot from a McKinsey report a couple of years ago, but here we can see the speed, scope, and economic value of 12 potentially economically disruptive technologies. And something like the mobile internet that at this point, a lot of us take for granted, had like 1.7 trillion worth of impact, or the cloud technology, advanced robotics, even autonomous cars are going to have really big impact. And so it's quite a privilege actually for us to be part of this technology landscape, to engage with it, because there's so much impact for all the things that we tinker with. And this is not diminishing, it's not shrinking. This is something that only grows as time goes on, right? I have a really I'm really fortunate that I'm in technology, but also that that's ended up opening up all these opportunities for me to be able to share that with society. So whether it's in my podcast, Women Tech Charge, whether it's meeting with the Queen, whether it's in the Sunday Times or on the Red Sofa or ASOS magazine or Countdown, now it's coming out soon, I've ended up being able to translate a lot of this technology and talk about it for society. And it's ended up meaning that my career's gone in a very unique way, but in a way that I couldn't have imagined and wouldn't really have planned. And our technical landscape is so broad and has so much impact that I think it's something we all have to consider, especially as you continue on your technical learning journey and working within technology, or even maybe going on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial endeavors, that actually so much of what we're deciding today, so much of what we're creating as technologists, ends up being kind of us creating the future. And I wonder how many times any of us think about this as we make technical decisions, or as we do our learning, or as we, work alongside others and explore all that technology has to offer. How many of us think about the future, and the fact that actually, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, what will the technical decisions that we make today, what will that mean in those 20 years? What will that mean in 30 years' time? What will that mean for, the future generations? And so when you consider the future, I don't know how many of you think of this kind of Guardians of the Galaxy-esque scenario with flying cars and futuristic looking buildings. I don't know how many of you consider something very much darker, maybe Terminator 2 or Black Mirror. But it's such an interesting thing that actually the future isn't just happening, right? It's not just inevitable. There's so much of what we do today and the decisions that we make at the moment that influence that. And you only have to look at something like Knight Rider, which some of you will remember, this kind of great show from the 1980s, where there was a guy called Michael who fought crime with his car Kit. And Michael would talk to the car. And in the 1980s, this was an amazing thing to be able to do. He spoke to the car, and the car not only heard him, but was then able to fight crime alongside him. And then it felt like such a futuristic thing, right? Such a sci-fi thing that has actually become sci reality, right? There's so many inanimate objects we talk to. I'm talking to an inanimate object now. And so it means that we all have a responsibility to kind of consider, to think about our tech landscape, and to ensure we're building a future that we can be proud of, and that we're considering our legacy in the way that we make technical decisions. Now, when we talk about the tech landscape, there are a lot of things. There's a plethora of things. I mean, I'm sure if you look on Udacity across the different courses, you've got pretty much all of them covered, but you can see in the thousands and thousands, there might be some themes and there might be some things that are completely unrelated to those technologies. So whether it's the Internet of Things, which allows us to have smart cities and, control your home from your phone, whether it's your heating, whether it's your lighting, whether it's the locks on your door, smart doorbells a lot of us have at the moment, whether it's virtual reality, which allows you to feel like you've been transplanted somewhere else. And I know the metaverse has had quite a big publicity in recent weeks and recent months, but that idea of being transplanted and having audio and video that moves with you, and kind of blocks out kind of almost kind of your main senses and transports you to somewhere else, and maybe allows you to build empathy, but maybe allows you as a firefighter to learn how to fight fires without literally having to set fires, set buildings on fire. Whether it's driverless cars that we might allow us to be able to get home safely if we've been out drinking, or may allow folks to have more mobility, or driverless cars that might even kind of completely change the role of something like the DVLA that we have here in the UK. But even just that concept, that rite of passage maybe of a driver's license might end up disappearing maybe, or even robotics and the things that robots are able to do. There's so many things across the tech landscape that we're able to engage with. And when we add them together and add in other trends like artificial intelligence or machine learning that some of you, I'm sure, have been doing courses on or will have heard, then we get to see these really powerful solutions, right? If we think back to little Anne-Marie and wanting to apply that knowledge to do good and to help others, we're able to then kind of begin to build solutions and see problems solved. So, here's one example, one kind of really big example, one that gets held up quite a lot actually in the tech community, of someone discovering an antibiotic for the first time using machine learning on previous data and information that had been collected. But it's an interesting one where the more we build and the more we look to the future, and more that we create the future, the more we need to make sure that we don't repeat too much the problems, the mistakes, the bad habits from the past. And there are quite a few that we, the more that this technology is being used, the more ubiquitous it comes, the more that we begin to see some of these holes and see some of these mistakes and see some of these repeating patterns that can be really easily avoided. So whether it's top left, that's me with slightly different hair, slightly different necklace, stood next to my mate John, who was the voice of Siri up until version iOS 8. And of course, Siri is it wasn't John you were talking to, but it was his voice that you were hearing. He was the voice artist. But Siri's voice is a great example of voice recognition technology, which we've had ye olde Siri for ages. Many of you will remember, if you call certain companies now, you get put through to the automated telephone system where you end up having to shout something in order for it to put you and route you through to the right department. But, ye olde Siri, you'd say, can you give me directions to Tottenham Court Road? And it would say, did you want ice cream? And you'd be like, that's nothing like what I just said. What is this, right? And it's only in recent times when we've ended up diversifying the sets of voices that we're training this voice recognition software on, that Siri has been able to be a little bit more useful for more circumstances. And we've been able to have, Alexa or any of these other voice assistants end up being ubiquitous and end up being almost a part of normal life, to the point that, I'm afraid to say, Alexa, let's get some toilet roll, just in case someone at home has got an Alexa listening and toilet roll turns up tomorrow. But it's one of those things that it was only in extending who they were training the algorithms on that technology became, fully useful. If you've got a brilliant Irish accent or Scottish accent, you'll know that Siri still doesn't quite understand everything you're saying. And older voices are also different from younger voices. There's a great video on YouTube called Two Scots in a Voice Activated Elevator. And it's like, spoiler alert, they go nowhere. But we've still got that. We're actually just thinking about the diversity of voices actually got in the way of that innovation taking off when it could have, given that we've been working on voice recognition and natural language processing for decades. At top right, we've got seatbelts and airbags, which again, at this point, they're mandated by law. You have to wear them when you get in cars. They were initially developed by teams of engineers who kind of considered who their average user of the car was going to be when we moved from horses to cars. There were not that many rules on the road, and so there were a lot of accidents on any given year on the road. And so they were tasked with creating a safety device that was going to keep people safer as they were using these new cars. Of course, they did that. They took their average user that they thought would be in the cars, which for them was 50th percentile male. And so early seatbelts killed women and children, which was not the point of the innovation, was not the point of what they were developing or the engineering work that they were doing, but that was the unnecessary byproduct, given that, a lot of people are not 50th percentile male. Some people are 2nd percentile male. Some people are 98th percentile male. Some people aren't even male. And so it means that till today, we have our security standards based on that 50th percentile male. And so I probably never used a seatbelt correctly in my life. And it's quite an alarming thing to think, it's not a surprise that we as women exist. And so why should we not be considered as something that's legally mandated by law for us to wear and to use? And two more examples at the bottom of the slide, periods, menstruation. I mean, I can talk about it today, and hopefully there aren't too many gasps in the room at me talking about that at tech conference, but I love doing that in the most techie of conferences where people maybe haven't heard the word period in a while, but we have this every now and then. Periods are a fact of life for quite a lot of people in the population. And so we end up having this tech that's built every now and then, that's for health and forgets that periods exist, or is for periods and forgets that, some people's period lasts longer than 10 days. And so ends up being rendered useless. And we have to kind of consider, actually, if we're forgetting about people that have periods as we are developing period tech, then what else are we forgetting is we're developing other types of technology that then ends up being harmful, getting in the way of true progress and true innovation. And the final example down here is some image recognition software. So this is skyscrapers, airplanes, cars, bikes. No, they're not gorillas. And yes, that is a graduation. And again, there's all there's a diversity of people that if we're not building our technology and considering them at the design process, implementation process, a testing process, then we're going to end up building products that really aren't fit for purpose and don't actually work out in society, which is kind of what we're trying to do as technologists. Now, of course, there's a lot to be said for why this has happened. I think a big thing that I end up pointing to is our image of who a technologist is and who has got us to this point. If we take a look at this image, this is a blurry image I took once at a secondary school, actually. That was the secondary school right across the road from where that photo of me aged 4 was taken. And this is a girls' state secondary school in East London. And this was a display they had up on their science board. And it's rather blurry because I took the image a little bit covertly. But if you look at it, we can see our image of scientists, right? This is a girls' secondary school. This is a display they had up in their science department. This is who scientists, mathematicians, engineers are. They are all dead, white, and male. And most of them here have beards. And it's quite an interesting thing for us to consider that, when we talk about technology needing diversity, if we assume that everyone that has got us to this point has been dead, white, male, and had a beard, then of course, it makes sense why there wouldn't be women in this space, or why there wouldn't be people who don't have beards in this space. But of course, that's absolute nonsense. There is quite a rich HERstory, a technical HERstory, if you will, of women. These are all women who are dead, but they're dead and they are women. Unfortunately, they're dead. Sorry, not that they're women, who actually have contributed quite a lot alongside all the other folks on the previous slide. So I do have a poll here, and here's hoping that it will work. Start poll. There we go. So looking at this slide, no one here is Marie Curie, no one here is Ada Lovelace, and no one here is Rosalind Franklin. How many of these women do you recognize? I'll give you about 30 seconds. There are 4 on the slide. You should be able to see the poll maybe in Bright Talk on the right-hand side, maybe the little kind of bar chart icon, and start voting. So how many of these women do you recognize? These women from HERstory who were not Marie Curie, they are not Ada Lovelace, they are not Rosalind Franklin, but those women, of course, could have been on this slide. How many of these women do you recognize? There's no votes coming through. Team in the green room, let me know if you can see the polls. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so there's a couple of votes coming through. Fantastic. So again, I'll say one more time. No Marie Curie, no Rosalind Franklin, and no Ada Lovelace. And we've got maybe another couple of seconds left. And it's quite an interesting one, actually. So no one has voted for so far. It's quite an interesting one to see as we go around audiences, kind of how many of these names are becoming recognizable, how many aren't, and how recognizable are what are their achievements versus the women behind those achievements. Someone has said 4, which I wish there was a chat so we could see if you genuinely know the 4. Normally in the olden days when we're in the room, I'd ask folks and put them on the spot, but you're all lucky today that we're on Bright Talk, so I can't do that. Brilliant. So I'm going to let the poll run a little bit more, but as things stand, 56% of you do not recognize any of the people on this. Oh, that's gone down to 52 now. 2% say you recognize all 4, which I'm super impressed if you do. Yeah, I mean, you win some kudos. I'm going to reveal who they are now and put you out your misery, but you do win some kudos if you do genuinely know all 4 of them, bearing in mind that no Marie Curie, no Rosalind Franklin, and no Ada Lovelace. So if we start from the right-hand side, we have Hedy Lamarr here on the right-hand side. She looks like a Hollywood actress. That's because she was a Hollywood actress. The most beautiful woman at the time is who Betty Boop was drawn on and kind of based on. And she co-invented frequency hopping spread spectrum technology, which if any of you have never heard of that, because you maybe didn't study physics, that's fine. You may have heard of something called Wi-Fi before, maybe, or Bluetooth, perhaps. So wireless communications, that's kind of everything that underpins that and how we see it today was co-invented by this lady, Hedy Lamarr, who, that Hollywood didn't really want to hear that she knew about science. They just wanted her to sit there and look pretty. And she got really frustrated, actually, over her life in the way that she was treated. But we have Hedy to thank every time we connect to Wi-Fi. And I wish that was a thing that we just said, thank Hedy, every time we successfully connect to the Wi-Fi. To her left is Katherine Johnson, which if any of you have seen the film Hidden Figures, you may recognize she was played by Taraji P. Henson, but she was a part of the Coloured Women's Computing Group at NASA in the 1960s. And so she was a computer before the computers came over and took over that job, and did a lot of calculations for spaceflight and things like Friendship 7 and the rest. And thankfully, they've now done the film on her life and those of her contemporaries. But again, the film says it all, really, hidden figures. To her left, we have Stephanie Kwolek, who was a chemist in the 1960s, who actually ended up playing with a waste product from one of the materials that they were working on at work, and discovering Kevlar, which is the material that makes bulletproof vests bulletproof. And so you can think how many lives have been saved actually by a mistake that was made and by the waste product being used, and the smart material that she was able to discover. And then on the left-hand side, the very left, the biggest image we have here is Marie-Sophie Germain, who was a mathematician in the 1700s. God forbid you were a woman studying maths at that point. And she ended up studying for her degree, kind of corresponding with the academics there under a pen name, under a male alias, M. Leblanc, Monsieur Leblanc. And it was only at the end that she was she was being awarded her degree as Monsieur Leblanc and uncovered herself as a woman, to which it was, Sacre Bleu, all the rest of that kind of stuff. But they allowed her in. And so she was contemporaries with Lagrange and Laplace. If any of you are mathematicians, you might recognize those names too, alongside Germain. And she did really well. Kind of string theory, lots of things that we do today are based on a lot of the theories that she developed. Yet, when it came to building the Eiffel Tower, they decided, to celebrate the French prowess and some of the engineering feats, to put the names of 72 mathematicians, scientists, and engineers of the day around the bottom rung of the Eiffel Tower. Which, if any of you have been, you may have seen that kind of engraved there in the steel and the metal that they built it in. But at that point, they knew she was a woman, and so they were like, yeah, it's a little bit for us to have a woman's name alongside these men's names, and so there was actual erasure that happened there. And so it's quite an alarming thing that we've then ended up inheriting that, right? Inheriting a very narrow image of who does the technology and who can contribute and who should be included as part of the technology. And this is something we need to work hard to reverse as we go forward into the future, so we can build technology that doesn't harm instead of helping. So, of course, there's a lot to be done with the next generation, with young women, with young girls, with non-binary young people who may not know, appreciate, see, have embraced the rich technical HERstory that they'll be stepping into by becoming a technologist, and also the creativity and the altruism that comes with being a technologist. And so that's why I run my social enterprise STEMettes. And if any of you want to be involved in helping the next generation, that's super important, and you can be involved. But I think it's also important for us as we begin and as we launch this network to actually start to consider kind of, again, beyond or in addition to being women, all the others that we need to then bring in. When we talk about diversity, this is the 2010 Equalities Act, UK Equalities Act, and there are 9 protected characteristics. And so, yes, we are a network of women. We're talking about women today, but actually within that, if you look along this list of 9, on the 8 other characteristics, where do you sit, right? You're not purely a woman or just a woman or only a woman. You are many other things, and in law we recognize at least 8 other things that you may be. But beyond that, if you think about where you sit on each of these, you're not just these 9 things, you are much more than that. And so there's a broad diversity of people that we need to have around the table as we consider the technology we're building, the technical decisions, how this is being rolled out across society, and the impact that it has across society. And so it's going to be something that's really important for all of us to do as a network, to consider, yes, we are women and much more. And there are privileges that we have, there are disadvantages that we may have, but there's actually agency for all of us to be able to change things and improve them and bring that technology in. So I wanted to close on some tips and some things to maybe help frame all of the information you're going to gather today, all the information you might gather while you're doing your next course on Udacity, but also the information that you might gather as you build your career. And this is kind of what I want to gift you as a network to kind of start off with as you go on this journey, right? As we start to build and as we ensure that we're building technology and we're building a future we can all be proud of, and that we can all say, yes, I was part of building that technology, and no, it didn't bring on Black Mirror or Terminator 2, and it did improve what happened next. So my first piece of advice is to have a growth mindset about technology, but also about your role within it. You have a comfort zone, which being on something like Udacity, doing these online courses is helping you to kind of jump outside of that. And I think it's really important to have the growth mindset, not just on your technical knowledge, but on your cultural understanding of what's going on within the space that you end up doing your technology in. And so whatever your comfort zone is, just outside it is where the magic happens. And having a growth mindset means that whether it's working on your tech projects, or whether it's working on being a manager, or whether it's working on building a future that is better, and learning about the different types of diversity, and learning about the different ways that you can be a good technologist, is to have a growth mindset means that you're always wanting to take a step at a time outside your comfort zone to where the magic happens, but you're taking a step at a time, and you're not doing it to be an expert, and it's not a big long jump, and it's not something where you're going to get to the destination and that's it. But actually a growth mindset means you're continually getting better, and you just want to be better than you were yesterday, or better than you were last week, better than you were last month, better than you were last year. And that's where you count your progress. So having a growth mindset means that you're always growing and you're always getting better, which is super important to have. The second is to find your way to be visible, and this is both internally in your organization but also externally. And this is a really important one to have and to take on, because I think often we can think it's maybe icky to post too much on Instagram, or post too much on Twitter, or I don't know, put too much on LinkedIn, or whatever it might be. But actually being able to own your own narrative, being able to share your learning, share the conferences that you're at, share the people that you're meeting, share the ideas and the nuggets that you're having and things that you're synthesizing in your head as you go outside of your comfort zone, is brilliant, because it means you're able to control your own narrative. It means you're able to build that in as a muscle, build that in as something that you're used to doing. And so actually then talking about your successes or talking about your thought process is something that you can do, you can be attributed to having done across your career, but also then opens you up to other opportunities that might relate to that might come along. And technology is one of those things that's constantly changing, right? And so there are always opportunities that are coming. There are always nuggets of things that you might have done while you were learning that 10 years later become a thing. And so actually, if you're able to go back and be like, actually, yeah, I did this and I built this prototype and I can just tweak it a little bit to make it into something that we're trying to solve now. So being able to find that visibility and be able to do that externally outside of the organization that you're in with the wider community, but also internally to the organization that you're in on whatever enterprise collaboration software that you're using or internal social media, then that's something that will only stand you in good stead and allow you to be a part of that tech landscape and pushing it forward and pushing it in the right direction. Third, is to build, measure, and iterate. And this links into the growth mindset. But for me, I find there's so much failure, right, that you can come across. There's so much things that might go wrong. And actually, if you see your career and see your next steps as an iteration, and see them as I'm going to do this experiment, I'm going to build, I'm going to measure that experiment afterwards, I'm going to learn from it and put that into the next thing, then it means that when you do make mistakes, when things do go wrong, it's fine because it was just part of that experiment. And it's not really an experiment if you know the right way. If you know what's going to happen, then it's not quite an experiment. So actually, when you have those failures, when things go wrong, when you make those mistakes, which you will, that's part of kind of the process, it's part of life, it's definitely part of being a technologist, then actually you'll be able to see each mistake and each failure and each thing that goes wrong as an opportunity to measure, to learn, and then to build again into your next loop, which is something that you can do as an individual, but also do as a team. My third to last is mentoring versus sponsoring. I know I'm running short on time and I want to answer loads of your questions, but our mentoring versus sponsoring is super important distinction to make, especially as you're growing as you're working in an organization and you're growing your career. So a mentor is someone that you can ask for advice, that can give you advice, and a sponsor is someone that gives you opportunities to apply that advice. You can ask someone to be your mentor, but you can't ask someone to be your sponsor. They have to be able to, if we think back to being visible, they have to be able to see what it is that they're sponsoring, right? They have to be able to see who it is that you are and what kind of opportunities that are within their power and within their agency to then put you in for, that they know because you've got a GitHub repository or because you've done such and such Udacity course, that then this is something an opportunity you might be able to take up. And actually having the two is going to be super important as you grow your career and as we think about technology and building the right kind of diversity in technology and in the upper echelons, in leadership and across all the technological sphere. Second to last is to learn with a tribe, and this you're kind of already doing, but I think this is why the network is a brilliant idea. Learning with others and a diversity of others enriches your path, enriches your learning, enriches your knowledge, and ensures that actually you've got that kind of multi-perspective on whatever it is that you're learning and you're applying. And I'll take Elwood's, I'll leave that off for now, maybe we can cover that if we've got extra time, but the lady in the middle is May Britt Moser, and she for me always visualize it. She's a Nobel Prize winner, and so for me she's a visual representation of the fact that you're much more likely to win a Nobel Prize in the sciences if you've engaged with the arts as part of your upbringing. And so actually you need that diversity. It's not just the technical knowledge that you're picking up that you need, but you need to be able to learn with the tribe, learn with lots of different people and lots of different perspectives to enrich your technical journey. And then my final thing that I wanted to say before we go to questions, because there's a really good one that's come through, is to recognize and use your influence. And this can be a tough one to say to people who are just starting their career, but I think it's an important one, that actually, you're in this network or you're on Udacity and there are people behind you that want to be there. And so actually you have a sphere of influence, you have people that look up to you no matter where you are in your technical journey. And recognizing, the sooner you can recognize that you have some form of influence and you can learn to use it, the sooner you can do that, the better you will be at being able to wield that influence for a better future. And I say this as, you don't want it to be that when you're the MD or the CEO or, have big title, that's when you start to make things better and that's when you start to improve things and build a technology industry that we can be proud of. Why not practice in the small? And being a part of the network is a really good way of, experimenting with influence, recognizing your influence, seeing your sphere of influence and trying to institute and do good things. Final excerpt actually from my slide, and there's a couple of books that I recommend here. Luckily enough for you all, you're seeing Cherie at the end of today. So I always have this slide on here, whether Cherie's coming up or not, but you will be seeing her. But this is a quote from Invisible Women, which is that in the UK, more than 90% of single parents are women. In the US, it's more than 80%, and has this example of someone who's a director at a company, who is attending a director's dinner. And if they're not a single parent, they book themselves into a hotel nearby, and that's how they're able to access the dinner. But if they are a single parent, they have to book with a babysitter. And it looks at the question of, is that babysitter an allowable expense the same way that a hotel is an allowable expense? And all the different kind of gaps that we can start to see and that you might be able to start to see across the tech culture, where you can just improve it a little bit for the different types of people, different diverse types of people. So I hope there was a lot to kind of go through there. I know there'll be lots of things kind of thrown at you throughout the day. I hope that started to kind of help you think a little bit more about, your journey as part of this network, your technical learning journey as well. And I think, the tech landscape is so amazing. It's so influential. There's so much of the future that we're building. We really need that diversity to make sure we're building the right kind of future. So thank you very much. Now, there are quite a few questions that have come in. The first, I'm going to do one question that I think has been upvoted or been selected here in the back end. And this is, how would a more traditional company that has mostly cis white male leaderships start their journey for a more diverse team? And I think, if you've got mostly cis white male leaders in your organization, a lot of these things still apply. There's a growth mindset about, you want to start your journey and you want to be iterative about it. You want to start on a series of experiments. I think the goal if you're a leader is always to kind of look at the culture and the opportunities that you do give to people that don't look like what your majority of leaders look like. So it's, how can you work with your promotion rounds? How can you work with your recruitment rounds to make sure that then you've got different types of people are able to become leaders alongside you, and then ensure that you've got a more balanced approach to leadership in your organization. So looking at promotion rounds, looking at who are the role models in your organization, the hidden figures, right? Who are the hidden figures in your organization that should be getting more credit, that should have been promoted a long time ago, that should be being represented at where you're making your really big decisions, that haven't been because of the fact that you've not been on this journey, and the fact that like we said, we've got that heritage of just thinking that success looks one way, whereas actually there are lots of different types of success. So for a more traditional company, I think starting your journey starts with looking at how you can diversify your leadership team, how you can diversify who you've got working alongside you, how can you recruit in from externally, but also how can you actually look at internally who you have that would be great, that you can grow from within, and proactively making those decisions to choose differently from what you've already had as your narrow definition of success. And I think definitely, engage with someone like a Cherie, engage with your HR teams, engage with your affinity networks that you should have already in your organization, to talk to them and understand, what is happening in your culture that is meaning that those people can't thrive and aren't actually sitting alongside you on your leadership journey. So I'm looking in the green room. I'm wondering if there's any other questions that I should answer. Team, let me know. I know I've gone a little bit over my time. Someone's asked for the recording, which I'm sure you can talk to the organisers about. Brilliant. Cool. So that's my time up. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and wishing you all the best as part of this network, STEM Forward with Women.